Tonight, Defence Minister Linda Reynolds takes another month off as speculation grows over her future in Cabinet.
Her position is untenable. You cannot call the alleged victim of a rape in your own office a lying cow.
Also tonight, unlikely allies come together for the shot and a united message.
Please get the vaccine.
A student speaks out over a school's racist culture. And grounds for a parade. Sydney's annual Mardi Gras moves to the SCG, but the party continues. Hello and welcome to ABC News Sunday. I'm Tamara Oudyn. There are growing doubts over the Defence Minister's future, with Linda Reynolds confirming she'll take another month of medical leave. Critics of the embattled senator are demanding she resign immediately over her handling of rape allegations, while some colleagues are privately questioning how long she'll remain in federal parliament. Here's Defence correspondent Andrew Green.
The Minister for Defence, Senator Reynolds.
Well, thank you very much, Mr President. And
Could this, just 12 days ago, be a final frontbench appearance? Facing intense pressure over her handling of a former staff member's rape allegations, Linda Reynolds was admitted to hospital as a precaution.
She was seen by a cardiologist for a pre-existing condition, which was exacerbated.
Hi. Great to see you again. You too.
Due back at work tomorrow, the Defence Minister has now confirmed she'll be out of action for another month. Senator Reynolds is recuperating well and looks forward to resuming her duties as Defence Minister as soon as possible. It means the West Australian will be absent from Parliament until mid-May, with Foreign Minister Marise Payne acting in her role until April.
Her position is untenable. You cannot call the alleged victim of a rape in your own office a lying cow.
Those inside the military believe the growing uncertainty over Senator Reynolds' future couldn't come at a worse time for Defence, as it grapples with dramatically changing strategic circumstances and highly complex shipbuilding projects.
Any change of minister in the defence portfolio is difficult because it takes them 6 months to read in. Changing them now would be even more dangerous.
And tonight the ABC can reveal that almost 3 months since former soldier Andrew Hastie was appointed as the minister's parliamentary secretary,
So help me God.
he's yet to receive a charter letter from the Prime Minister outlining his official defence duties. With the Attorney-General, Christian Porter, also on medical leave, Cabinet's all-important National Security Committee is significantly reduced for now. Many of Linda Reynolds' colleagues believe a new minister could soon take her place, and given an election is just days away in Western Australia, there'll be more than a few disappointed Liberal Party candidates eyeing her Senate spot as an easy way into Parliament. Andrew Green, ABC News, Canberra.
Australia's vaccine rollout is about to move into a new phase, with the Health Minister saying we're on track for 500,000 jabs a week. More than 4,000 GP clinics have been enlisted, as well as a former Prime Minister, to help build confidence in the process. But some doctors have raised concerns with the number of clinics involved, saying they're being stretched too thin. Ashley Raper reports.
Setting the standard.
Are you happy to have the AstraZeneca vaccine today?
I would be delighted.
Today was the Health Minister's turn now that AstraZeneca is available, and he shared the experience with an unlikely ally.
Didn't hurt at all. That's amazing. Thank you. No matter who you intend to vote for, there is a united message, and that united message is please get the vaccine.
But Julia Gillard's presence was more than simply a bipartisan push.
There is some hesitancy, in particular, younger women, 25 to 45. Julia speaks to that group.
You do need to be looking at the health lines, like the Australian government information, and make sure that what you're getting is from scientists, not social media influencers.
The government is employing its own persuasive powers.
I know that people listened to me a lot in the early stages of the pandemic, and I want you to listen to me again when I say that I really, really trust these vaccines.
This week, both AstraZeneca and Pfizer will be used.
Today marks the beginning of our big population-wide approach with this vaccine.
More than 4,500 general practices have been approved to participate in the rollout, and that'll start on March the 22nd. In that first week, 1,000 will be administering the vaccine. That'll scale up over 4 weeks. First in line will be the elderly and certain people with chronic health conditions.
So 4,600 have been notified by letter that they'll be part of the programme. Some of those letters are now giving us a bit more detail. However, we need to make sure that the contracts are suitable.
Concerns have been raised about the feasibility of the model the federal government is using. Some GPs say spreading the limited doses across thousands of practices makes it financially unviable. But the big medical bodies are backing the government. The Australian Medical Association just isn't convinced about the timeline.
A deadline of October for our entire population to be vaccinated is very ambitious and I don't think it's going to be achieved.
It depends on availability of the vaccine. The government insists the overseas supply is secure, and in 2 weeks the first of the locally produced AstraZeneca will be available. Ashley Raper, ABC News.
A student from Greater Shepparton Secondary College has spoken out about the school's culture that she says often makes her feel subhuman. A scathing internal report commissioned by the Department of Education detailed systemic racism and cultural exclusion, with a growing gap between the highly diverse student population and the school's all-white teaching staff. Courtney Howe reports.
Year 12 student Narissa Leach wants to study hard this year with the hopes of getting accepted to study at university next year. But she's determined to make Greater Shepparton Secondary College a better place before she leaves.
Words that, makes us feel subhuman. But that's just a small snippet of what we actually experience at school.
Narissa says racism needs to be dealt with more seriously by the school.
Many of my friends have been, they come from different backgrounds, different nationalities, and they've been told to go back to their own country. Things like the N-word.
The need for change is not just for the students who feel like they don't belong, but also their parents.
Many of them don't feel comfortable coming into the school, even just to make payments, and especially many with a language barrier, they can feel very uncomfortable.
The report commissioned by the Education Department found the college to be a picture of systemic racism, and there were a high number of racist incidents by teachers towards students. In a statement, the Victorian branch of the Australian Education Union said neither they nor college staff have seen this report detailing the systemic racism in the school. The union said staff should have the opportunity to first see the report in order to address the issues it has raised.
We've got a report that's highlighted issues. There's an appetite in the community to do something about it.
Local independent MP Susanna Sheed says more funding needs to be made available to deal with the issues the school and the community face.
I'll be going to the Treasurer before this next budget to say, give us the resources we need.
Narissa Leach wants to see more cultural programs in the school, such as language and providing more connection to country.
Everyone deserves to belong and everyone deserves to have a safe space, and that's what school should be for everyone.
Courtney Howe, ABC News, Shepparton.
As the vaccine rollout gathers pace and restrictions ease, Australia's economy is slowly getting back on track. The Treasurer says the early signs are very encouraging, but the Reserve Bank is more cautious and doesn't expect unemployment to improve until the end of the year. Here's Alan Kohler. Looks like we've got a problem with that story, so we'll move on. Experts say there's likely to be an increase in illegal drug shipments coming to Australia from the Middle East because of a boom in methamphetamines in Iran and Afghanistan. It's being fuelled by the increasing use of a plant that grows in the wild in that region. Federal police believe criminal groups have targeted innocent Iranians in Australia, using them as unwitting drug mules in an elaborate scam. Christian Silver reports.
These imports of hand sanitizer and light fittings aren't what they seem. Hidden inside, methamphetamines, transported from Iran to Melbourne. Federal police say the man who received the shipment had no idea what was smuggled inside.
They've been sort of sucked into schemes where offers are made to get involved in businesses exporting goods from Iran or Turkey and other places.
Police say organised crime groups in the Middle East have targeted at least 6 other people in Melbourne's Iranian community, recruiting them over social media.
These criminal enterprises will seek to take advantage of innocent people.
If the widespread nature of it, if it were as significant as it is represented, we probably would have heard within the community.
Local Iranian leader Kam Razmara says revelations of a drug scam shouldn't tar an entire community.
We'd like to work with the authorities to actually dispel those stereotypical views rather than promote them.
Experts say methamphetamine production in Iran and Afghanistan has been booming in recent years. It's because of this crop, ephedra, which grows in the wild and contains chemicals used to make the drugs.
What we've found is that this is a high purity product, but not only is it high purity, it is incredibly cheap to produce.
And these substances are increasingly finding their way to countries like Australia.
You have this huge oversupply of methamphetamine in Iran that they're trying to move to consumers globally. And Australia is, of course, one of the most lucrative consumer markets.
Last month, 2 men were charged after federal police seized methamphetamines from this Sydney warehouse. The drugs allegedly imported from Iran had a street value of $187 million. And in 2020, $80 million of liquid drugs were found in packs of water bottles in New South Wales. Human drug trafficking into Australia may have stopped because of border closures, but police say exporters have increased their use of air and sea freight. While there have been some arrests in Australia, the Mr. Bigs of these operations overseas remain elusive and largely anonymous. Christian Silva, ABC News, Melbourne.
US President Joe Biden has scored his first major legislative victory, with the Senate passing a $1.9 trillion pandemic relief package. The bill aims to bolster the sluggish economy with direct payments to households and supercharge America's vaccine rollout.
It's horrible. Just hours after the Senate passed the bill, anti-lockdown protesters tossed masks into a fire outside the Idaho Capitol.
Destroy them! Here, fire, here's another mask!
They say mask mandates impinge on their freedom as America grapples with its worst public health crisis in a century.
This nation has suffered too much for much too long. And everything in this package is designed to relieve the suffering and to meet the most urgent needs of the nation.
The rescue plan will pour billions into schools and direct payments of $1,400 to most Americans. It'll also inject more funding into COVID testing and supercharge the nation's vaccine rollout, which is currently averaging 2 million jabs a day. 3,000 kilometres away in Venezuela, President Maduro has just joined the list of world leaders to get the vaccine. Also rolling up his sleeve on live TV was Nigeria's President Buhari. Africa's most populous country is among the first 20 nations to receive vaccines from the WHO's global COVAX program.
No country is safe until every country is safe.
COVAX has already delivered 20 million doses worldwide and is poised to roll out more.
In the next week, COVAX will deliver 14.4 million doses to further 31 countries.
But export bans and a shortage of raw materials is impacting the speed and volume of production. India's Serum Laboratories is one of the manufacturers contributing to COVAX. In the northwest of the country, the 85-year-old Tibetan Buddhist leader, the Dalai Lama, took his vaccination in his stride.
I want to share. More people should have courage to take this injection.
The government is aiming for 300 million jabs by August, but is struggling to hit daily targets. Jenny Lavelle, ABC News.
Experts say Europe is facing an uphill battle to distribute the vaccine quickly as a new wave of cases surges across the continent. France's Prime Minister has pledged to go all out on his country's rollout, opening hundreds of centres in Paris and nationwide. But only 12,000 doses were available in the capital this weekend. The country is aiming for 30 million vaccinations by June. In Italy, the government is under increasing pressure to accelerate its lagging rollout. The country has just recorded its highest one-day increase in cases in 3 months. And in the UK, more than 21 million people have now had their first dose of the vaccine. And after months of remote learning, students will return to classrooms this week. Now returning to Alan Kohler's piece tonight about Australia's economy and the encouraging signs around its recovery.
It looks like Australia is in the midst of a very surprising economic boom. We knew that housing was booming, and that was confirmed last Monday with news that the national median house price had gone up 2.1% in February, the biggest rise in 17 years. We also learned last week that $29 billion in housing loans were taken out in January, the most in 1 month in history. And job advertisements are booming, if not actual jobs yet. And then on Wednesday, a 3.1% rise in December quarter GDP, prompting this from Treasurer Josh Frydenberg.
This is the first time in recorded history that Australia has seen 2 consecutive quarters of economic growth of more than 3%.
Yes, but if you look more closely, it's good, but not that good. We usually measure national output, or GDP, in quarters. It's just convenience. But 2020 was a year of 2 halves. Recession by government decree in the first half, recovery in the second half. So let's measure it in halves, not quarters. First half GDP was $957 billion, which is 3.6% less than the second half of 2019. Second half GDP, $968 billion, which is a rise of 1.2% over the first half. So a modest recovery, but probably not worth a press conference. Here's another way to look at it. Right now, GDP is $14 billion, or 2.8% less than it would have been without the pandemic. And that's the cost of COVID-19, plus $350 billion of government stimulus. And that's 17% of GDP that's been added to it. Now, we'll never know what would have happened to the economy without all that extra government borrowing and spending, which is 5 times as much as during the GFC. But was it too much? Absolutely not. When you're talking about people's livelihoods and lives, there's no such thing as too much.
You're watching ABC News Sunday. Still to come tonight, a World Cup winning Wallaby speaks out about his childhood sexual abuse. John Daly's push for justice after suffering in silence for nearly 40 years.
I just did as I'm told because I was 11 and brother told me to do that, so I did it. And that creates a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, anger.
Post-COVID lockdowns, many Victorians are still struggling to re-enter the workforce. But a new program is looking to retrain some of the state's most vulnerable to work in digital startups. Priyanka Srinivasan reports.
After losing his job at a Melbourne restaurant last February, just before the city went into lockdown, Moses Bowling Sandwan contemplated moving back to the Philippines.
I guess it was poor timing because, hospitality experience, and then next thing you know, pandemic hits and restaurants and places are all closed.
He applied to dozens of jobs, but for months heard nothing back.
Being an international person, it was hard to get a job, no government benefits.
In January, Victoria's unemployment rate fell to 6.3% after hitting a high of 7.5% in mid-2020. But the January figures are still higher than the same time last year. And multiple studies say women, migrants and young people make up the bulk of those struggling.
The pandemic hasn't had an even impact on people
across the economy.
Life is slowly returning to normal on Melbourne's streets, but there are still empty shops dotted around the city. A new Victorian initiative aims to get people like Moses, who are looking for employment, retrained in the IT industry, which the government says needs more workers.
I needed an upgrade, a career change.
For others in the course, they are able to learn skills unavailable to them in their home countries. Originally from Afghanistan, Farzana's family came to Victoria as refugees.
Countries like Afghanistan and Pakistan, women doesn't have much right, and work as a woman working in IT, and IT is a very male-dominated area.
She hopes the 5-week government-funded program will power up a career in web development.
I believe if I wasn't here, I wouldn't be able to achieve those dreams.
A chance for new beginnings as Victorians look toward the future. Priyanka Srinivasan, ABC News.
As the UK's lockdown grinds into its 9th week, Londoners have been forced into the only legal means of socialising. Endless walks in the park, even in the depths of winter. And it's Australian-style takeaway coffee that's fueling them. Europe correspondent Linton Besser reports.
For 9 million people, it's been a desolate winter in an empty metropolis. But for some in London, the isolation of lockdown has given rise to new opportunities.
My mate Jake called me just literally out of the blue, saying that the bakers that he's using were closing. Like, we had the bakery space already, and then we just put ads out for bakers. Within 24 hours, we had 100 applications.
With his supplier forced out of business, Australian caterer Chris Brumby turned this old chip factory into a bakehouse almost overnight.
So we are doing around 200, 250 loaves a night, supplying 25 to 30 cafes right now. First delivery van out at 2 in the morning, next one goes at 6, and we're at capacity already.
Britain might be in its worst downturn in 3 centuries.
Can I have one skinny flat white and one oat milk?
But Lockdown Bakehouse is expanding. In part, it's working because in the midst of a roaring pandemic, takeaway coffee and cake are among the few legal pleasures left. Normally, Brits would gather for a pint in the pub, but in this long lockdown, it's takeaway coffees and a walk in the park, no matter the weather.
I think every day the only thing that people can do is go out and grab a coffee, go for a walk. You're allowed to meet one other person from one other household.
The demand is so great, Ed Barry just opened his 5th cafe.
The pandemic has not spelled the end of our ambitions. We are very excited to continue to grow.
But after 10 months of restrictions, owners like Australian Jake Mangan hope the return to normal is near.
It's, probably the last roll of the dice, in all honesty.
For now, Londoners are getting through the lockdown, one flat white at a time.
There has been a little bit of comfort in knowing that your local cafe is open, being able to have that 1 or 2 minutes to converse with, your barista who knows your coffee, who knows your name.
And when it finally does come to an end, London's famous pubs might find they've got some new competition. Linton Besser, ABC News, London.
Pope Francis has landed in Mosul, the city that was once a stronghold for Islamic State, as part of the first ever papal visit to Iraq. The Catholic leader prayed for the victims of the war in a church first devastated by IS and then destroyed by an airstrike campaign to liberate Mosul. In his landmark tour of Iraq, coming face to face with the influential Shiite cleric, Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani, he visited the cleric's modest home to urge peace between the country's Muslims and minority Christians.
Hostility, extremism and violence are betrayals of religion. We believers cannot be silent when terrorism abuses religion.
The Pope then travelled to Baghdad, where he presided over a mass, hoping to persuade Iraq's dwindling number of Christians to remain there despite years of persecution. Now to tonight's special report. Tony Daly was once on top of the world in arguably Australia's greatest rugby union team. But in the decades after that, his life descended into a spiral of drinking, drugs and crime as a legacy of sexual abuse he suffered as a child. He claims he was abused by a Catholic brother at an elite Sydney boarding school. And while he stayed silent for 40 years, now he's speaking out and seeking justice with the hope it'll help others to do the same. Here's National Sport reporter David Mark.
Tony Daly kept the secret of his sexual abuse hidden for more than 40 years.
I have processed it, but I don't accept it. It shouldn't have happened. Everything. The successes and failures, all's got to do with that, without question.
When he was just 10, he followed the family tradition and began boarding at Sydney's famous St Joseph's College in Hunters Hill. It wasn't an easy transition.
I got a bit of a hard time when I was at school. I was a bit of a chubby kid when I started. It was quite intimidating and scary because, you know, you're only a young kid living with 930 other blokes.
That's when one of the brothers at the school stepped in, apparently to help.
I did get a hard time at school and he identified that.
But in reality, it was the beginning of a grooming process, well beyond the comprehension of a young boy.
He was saying kind words to me. You're safe here, you're okay here. So that gave me, oh, I've got a new friend.
Daly had just turned 11 when he claims the sexual abuse started. He estimates it happened around a dozen times over the next 2 years.
I just did as I'm told because I was 11 and brother told me to do that, so I did it. And that creates a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, anger.
His saving grace was rugby.
I was just one of those fat kids that could play footy.
At just 23, he was plucked from obscurity to play for the Wallabies against the might of the All Blacks in 1989.
Yeah, Dales was always a really friendly guy. He was always very funny, great sense of humour. He was an incredibly talented rugby player as well.
So the teams are just starting to come out. The Australians are on the park.
And there's Tony Daly, Chris, with the sleeve, cut right off.
Talent that saw him reach the game's biggest stage, playing and winning a World Cup for Australia in 1991. He scored the only try of the match. He'd achieved everything he'd dreamed of and more.
I identified rugby as my, life, my core, my heart, yeah.
But the sexual abuse, which he'd managed to suppress, resurfaced when he was dropped from his beloved Wallabies 4 years later.
There was always some feeling inside me that was on pause, it was in remission until it came out again.
He quickly spiralled, drinking, doing drugs, gambling, 2 failed marriages, committing petty crimes and driving whilst disqualified.
I remember sort of reaching out to him at one stage and he didn't seem that keen to be in touch necessarily.
I wish I would have gotten help a little bit earlier.
Daly hit rock bottom in 2017 when, after years of evading convictions for driving without a licence, he was arrested, faced court and a potential jail sentence.
And the judge goes, you need to give me something because I've got nowhere to go but incarceration. What's going on with you? Did something, I said, oh, look, Judge, he said, I got abused when I was at school. He said, he said, I knew it. You were a Joey's boy, weren't you? I said, yeah.
After 4 decades, and to his horror, his secret was now public knowledge.
I think the first feeling, and probably the predominant feeling, is sadness because you think no one should experience that.
But over the past 4 years, and with the support of friends, he's begun to tell his story on his own terms.
It's true, you change, and you have to. I'm so privileged to be in this room and hear you talk. No,
well done, mate. It's all right. We only played in a World Cup final together.
Tony Daly is just one of many in a nation with a tragic history of child sexual abuse.
I've had so many people approach me from Joey's saying it happened to me too.
More than ever, survivors like Australian of the Year, Grace Tame, are speaking out.
We are on the precipice of a revolution whose call to action needs to be heard loud and clear.
But it's not an easy road.
The innocent, survivors and bystanders alike, are burdened by shame-induced silence.
That silence can last for decades. For some, it's a lifetime. On average, it takes women 20 years to report sexual abuse. For men, it's more than 25 years.
Particularly if men have a same-sex perpetrator, questions about their own sexuality and what that means is often confusing for them.
Daly has sought help through a support group for male victims of sexual abuse, and he's urging others to speak up.
It's awesome. I mean, Tony is so brave to do this, and if his voice cuts through because of his profile, then that's a really great thing.
I just want to get out there and tell the Joey's kids and other kids, for that matter, that you need to identify and announce it. If you keep hiding it, it's going to get the better of you.
You've begun legal proceedings against St Joseph's.
Yes, I have, yep.
What are you seeking?
Just acknowledgement of what happened. Acknowledgement, I want them to see what's happened and how it's affected my life.
The ABC asked Marist Brothers, which owns St Joseph's College, to respond to Tony Daly's claim that the school failed to provide him with a duty of care. It wouldn't comment on his specific case, but said it had apologised for the harm caused to children in the past. Tony Daly is still waiting for his personal apology.
Is that supposed to be hunky-dory in the Joey's family? Oh, don't worry, she'll be right, mate. Deal with it, get over it. Have another beer, score another try. Times have changed.
And if that story has raised any issues for you or someone you know, you can call one of the phone numbers on the screen there, 1800 RESPECT or Lifeline on 131114. In round 6 of the AFLW, Collingwood has firmed as flag favourites as teams jostle for spots in the run home to the finals. The Magpies made it 6 straight wins. Melbourne and Carlton kept their finals chances alive, and Fremantle in the derby in the West.
The Eagle let loose at Perth Stadium, but it was the Dockers who were playing with greater freedom.
That is Fremantle at their very best.
The purple and white continued to reach great heights.
Big fly from Roo! Roxy Roo with a spectacular grab.
Gemma Houghton finished with 5 goals, the Dockers thrashing the Eagles by 67 points. Collingwood and the Western Bulldogs were locked in an arm wrestle at Victoria Park. A sellout crowd saw just 1 goal in the first half, but the dangerous Chloe Malloy broke the game open in the third quarter.
Gets onto her right boot and kicks a goal!
The Pies piled on 7 second-half goals to run out 36-point winners and reclaim top spot.
I think if we can keep the form up, keep working hard, we can get there.
With Taylor Harris out, the Blues turned to Darcy Vesio. The goal sneak on fire early against Geelong at Princes Park.
Vesio lurking. Can she have 2 in a minute? She does. Vesio's a star.
There was an injury scare for Madison Prespakis.
And she's just grabbed at that left elbow.
But the marquee midfielder returned to spark her side. She finished with 27 touches and a goal.
She's just too good, Prespakis.
Carlton's 33-point victory means the Cats remain winless at the bottom of the ladder, while the Blues sit on the cusp of the top 6. At Casey Fields, Daisy Pearce blew the kiss of death to the Saints. The decorated leader on the end of Melbourne's dominance as they racked up 13 inside 50s to St Kilda's 0 in the first quarter.
Good pressure, better kick.
By the time Pearce slotted her second, the game was out of reach for the Saints.
It's a simple game if you just stick to the process, so yeah, happy with that.
The 44-point win keeps the Demons in touch with the top 6. Tom Maddox, ABC News.
It's the final round of trial games in the AFL, and it looks like both Sydney and the Giants will have several new faces featuring in the opening round. GWS top pick Tanner Bruin made a strong case with 3 goals in the first half against the team's local rival.
In this second term, Bruin, no one home. Toby's going to get on his bike. Bruin gets the roll, and the newbie has got 3.
The Giants built a big lead before the Swans hit back, with number 3 draft pick Logan McDonald proving an avenue up forward. GWS ended up winning by 28 points. In the late game, Port Adelaide again showed it could challenge for the flag this year. with high-profile recruits Orazio Fantasia and Alia prominent against the Adelaide Crows. In cricket, New Zealand has clinched the T20 series against Australia 3-2, cruising to a 7-wicket victory in the decider in Wellington. Matthew Wade top-scored for Australia with 44 off 29, while captain Aaron Finch continued his impressive form, making 36 runs, setting the Black Caps 143 to win. New Zealand opener Martin Guptill hit 7 fours and 4 sixes to earn player of the match, top scoring with 71 off 46 balls. Glenn Phillips smashed a 6 to seal the win with 27 balls remaining.
He's got it cleanly, and he's got it cleanly for 6.
The constant improvement from game 1 through to game 4 was really pleasing, and the fact that a couple of guys made their debut and performed really well, that's been exciting.
Australia will welcome back stars David Warner, Steve Smith, Pat Cummins and Mitch Starc ahead of the T20 World Cup in October in India. Well, there was glitz, there was glamour, love and inclusion, but there wasn't Oxford Street. Sydney's 43rd Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras has gone ahead at the Sydney Cricket Ground, a move sparked by the pandemic. But it still had the hallmarks of the adored parade, and audiences left glowing.
It's hallowed sporting ground, but for one night only, it was Dykes on bikes rumbling across the green. Followed by the 78ers, the unmistakable Mardi Gras flavour took hold.
Given that we've had COVID this year, even to have an event this year is so amazing.
We weren't sure what it was going to be like, new venue, completely new experience, but oh my goodness.
Ditching Oxford Street and the floats, this year was all about the glam. Joy and pride in the middle of the pitch, just as emotional, in front of a fraction of the usual audience. Aussie artists enthralled the crowd, some barely containing their excitement the event had gone ahead.
When I got off stage, I started crying. I had some of the backstage crew in all their black outfits with their mics, and I was holding on to them, having a little cry.
Even with the stadium stylings, the message of protest and inclusion wasn't lost.
People are no less more passionate, they're still having a good time, they're still out there celebrating who they are.
The festival theme is Rise and letting the spirit soar after such a challenging 12 months. And if the energy here is anything to go by, the feeling of recent hardship couldn't be farther away.
But this year, most had to watch from home or make a COVID-safe party of it.
You do not have to leave Tamworth or your small country town in the inner northwest to be able to express yourself and enjoy things like this and celebrate who you are.
And while many in the community can't wait to get back to Oxford Street, for now, the parade hit the mark.
They did the best with what they could, and I think they pulled it off. It was amazing.
Expand it, develop it, keep it coming. We'll be here again. I hope you have the best night at the Mardi Gras.
Plenty of much-needed sparkle. Tim Swanston, ABC News, Sydney.
To the weather now. There was a little rain overnight and it was chillier than usual for March. It got down to 3.3 degrees at Mount Hotham Airport. Today got off to a mostly sunny start, apart from some patchy morning fog and cloud in the south. High cloud moved in from the west and gradually thickened as the day wore on. Daytime temperatures were a few degrees above average. Swan Hill was warmest with a top of 32. In Melbourne, we hit our high of 28.5 degrees at around 3 o'clock this afternoon. Right now, it's 23. Interstate today, it was sunny in Sydney, mostly sunny in Brisbane and Perth, overcast in Adelaide and Hobart, and Darwin had a thunderstorm. The satellite image is showing clouds streaming from the interior to South Australia, New South Wales, Victoria and Tassie. There's further cloud over the north and down along the east coast. A low pressure trough will cross central and eastern Victoria tomorrow, and a ridge will push into the southwest from a high over the Bight and extend right across the state on Tuesday. Showers are expected tomorrow in parts of Queensland, Tassie, South Australia and WA, showers and storms in New South Wales and the Northern Territory. For the capital cities, showers and a storm are likely in Sydney and Darwin, and it'll be partly cloudy in all the other centres. Back home, the public holiday will be mostly cloudy and generally mild, but cool in the southwest. There's a chance of a storm in the north in the afternoon and evening. Isolated showers will extend from the west, become more widespread in the south and contract to the east at night. Pretty calm on the bay tomorrow with a south to southwesterly running to around 10 knots and waves under a metre. Monday in Melbourne will be cloudy with showers likely in the afternoon and evening and a top of 21 down to 16 tonight. And looking ahead, cloudy on Tuesday 20, partly cloudy on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday with tops in the low to mid-20s, then showers right through next weekend. And that's it from the news team for now. Enjoy your evening. Good night.
Next on ABC.